This right here is the brand new Sigma BF camera. I've spent the past week working with it mainly in Japan, but now also back home here in Denmark. In this video, I'll share my thoughts on this stylish and modern camera, including the design, usability, brand newly designed and different menu system, the picture quality, and finally, who is this camera for? This specific camera is a demo model. I do not get to keep it. I'm not paid by Sigma, nor am I expected to say anything about the camera. But I do think it is interesting enough to make a video about it. Next week, I'll start releasing all my videos from me and Sophie's trip to Kyoto and Mount Fuji in Japan, and I got an incredible set of photos, so you can definitely subscribe and look forward to that. So first things first, the design. As Marques Brownlee says, if Apple was ever to make a camera, it would look something like this. It is a camera that will definitely divide the photography world. There will be those who will completely disregard this camera for being impractical. And then there's the other side who are like, whoa, this looks so good. And especially in a case with a camera like this, it's important that we do not judge a fish by its ability to fly, because this camera is just not made for professional use in the sense that, as an example, I do with epic landscape photography. Can the Sigma BF be used for it? Yes. Will I buy the Sigma BF camera for it? No. The Sigma BF camera comes in two colors, silver and black. And with the renewed Sigma I series of lenses that now also comes in silver or aluminum color, it really is a beautiful looking camera. Personally, I prefer the silver version, but if you want to use other traditional black Sigma lenses on it, I'd prefer the black version. With a 24.6 megapixel full frame sensor, the potential for great image quality is there, but it obviously more depends on what lens you use rather than the camera itself. And the price for the camera house is around $2,000 US. For the overall design, as you can see, there is no EVF, so you solely rely on the screen, and due to the minimal design, the screen neither flips nor tilts. There is no flash or any flash hot shoe either. There is, however, 231 GB of internal storage, which means no SD cards. That could be problematic if you want to back up or shoot several SD cards, but I personally do not mind it. On the left side, you have a high-speed USB-C port for transferring files, and on the right side, you can attach a strap. I guess most people would prefer also to be able to attach a strap on the left side, just to balance the camera better. On the underside, it is rubberized, so it doesn't scratch any surfaces you place it on. The camera is stripped to the bare minimum on the outside, but still offers a whole host of features on the inside, such as video up to 6K resolution, raw DNG file format, and obviously JPEGs, interval shooting, auto exposure bracketing, focus bracketing, exposure warnings such as zebra stripes, all the different kinds of focusing modes, human and animal detection, aspect ratio previews, grid lines, electronic levels, and much more. Not to mention, the focusing is snappy and works without any hiccups, at least in my experience. There is, however, no image stabilization, which is a bit of a bummer as it forces you to keep that shutter speed even more in mind, and you may need to increase it even more than you're used to. I do think of this camera a bit like an Apple product or a Tesla. Very simple and stylish design, probably not to everyone's taste, but still full of most of the different features that you will need. Obviously, in any universe, a handle would be both more comfortable and more practical. But if you had a handle, then you would also compromise on this super sleek design. Handling it does take a little bit of getting used to if you've always had a handle, but the little thumb supporter right here, the rounded corners here and down here, actually makes it, in combination with this textured ruggedness here in front, actually pretty doable in regard to handling it. Like, I don't feel that I'm throwing it away or it's sliding out of my hands. So it is, of course, not the most comfortable camera in the entire world to hold on to, but you have a grip and you are not afraid of dropping it or it sliding out of your hands. So on to the menu. It is all new, so obviously different and requires a bit of getting used to, but it is simple enough, so if you use the camera somewhat regularly, you'll figure it out. There are no manual aperture priority, shutter speed priority, or program mode. Think of the menu as how you have to change settings in the newer DJI drones. Shutter speed, aperture, and ISO can all be set automatic or at a fixed value, and in that way you can achieve one of those modes. Like if you set your ISO to 100, the aperture to f8, and the shutter speed to auto, you will have the same result as if the camera was an aperture priority. If you have any of your settings set to auto, you can also either change the exposure compensation in the same menu, choose exposure compensation by scrolling through the menu, or half press the shutter and turn the dial, also even though you're continuously focusing. Extremely helpful. It is a touch screen, sometimes, and it feels a bit random when it is touch and when you need to use the dial or buttons. But again, it is something you will get used to. As a landscape photographer, I often use auto exposure bracketing, and I really struggled finding this function. I found the bracketing and the shutter timer delay easily via the shooting mode options, but if you want the auto function, where the camera takes the brackets fast after each other, you actually just have to continue scrolling in the menu here. I first thought I needed to select 3 shots and then select the auto function somewhere else, so that was not completely intuitive, but now that I know it is there, I can always find it again. The camera also have haptic touch on the buttons, so as an example, you can review a photo by simply just loosely press on the play button to see the last photo that you photographed, or you can fully press and click the button to enter the play menu. One way I have found to like using the camera for street photos is to use continuously focusing with the 1-point focus area, half press the shutter to focus on whatever I want to focus on, and then compose the photo properly afterwards. In Japan, I got to use the Sigma BF with a 35mm f2, and despite me being a landscape photographer and generally always prefer a zoom lens to a prime lens unless I do astro landscape photography, I gotta admit that I thoroughly enjoyed walking the streets of Tokyo with this camera and only use the 35mm f2. It was super inspiring, and it is when you're inspired you take photos, and that is after all the purpose of a camera. So for me it fulfills its goal. I purposely used the incandescent white balance in combination with the rich color style, which is one of the many different color styles that this camera offers. It made for an awesome cold futuristic feeling to the photos that I think fitted the scenes very well. I also personally always shoot RAW just to get the maximum out of my files, so it is easy to correct any color or exposure in post-processing. That's also why I never ever use any color styles in my regular landscape photography work, although I do change the white balance as to get some proper feedback in the field. For testing out the Sigma BF, I did also shoot JPEGs, and I found that I actually got pretty good feedback through the screen and only needed minor adjustments for most of the photos I have taken. As mentioned, the image quality depends heavily on the lens, but considering some of these photos were taken at high ISO values like 6400, 10,000 and 12,800, they actually hold up really well. If you stop the lens down a bit to like f4, you can also see the corners are tack sharp despite the high ISO value, if they are in focus. Remember, this is a demo model, but one big issue I noticed is that the electronic shutter is prone to interference patterns when shooting in artificial light. The patterns are those brownish, soft, big lines through the photos. In my case here, it seems to only happen when I shoot faster than 1/100th of a second. I talked with Sigma about it, and all my photos were sent to the lab, so hopefully it can get corrected before the camera is officially released. As mentioned, I've just really enjoyed using this camera. Once you play around with it a bit and get used to the thinking of it, it is relatively intuitive to use, so you do not need to think too much about using the camera, and you can instead use your brain power on composing your photos. No matter if you do landscape photography, street photography, wildlife photography or something else, the principles of composition are the same. In all the photos I've shown, I've used some very basic principles where I placed my subject on a brighter background so it becomes the most high contrast area of the photo. You are in no doubt about what I want to show you. Furthermore, I used all the lines of the city and architecture to force the visual flow towards the subject. In the photos where I did not place the subject in the middle, I had something that broke the geometry of the photo on the other side of the middle to counterbalance the subject. If you struggle with composition, be sure to get my ebooks on exactly that topic, and bundled up with my brand new ebook on light in landscape photography, you can also learn how to use and benefit from light. With minimal text and tons of examples, all 3 ebooks are super easy to read. There is a link to the ebooks and my huge 30+ videos post-processing course where I share all my techniques for making your photos pop down in the description of the video. The battery, let's be honest, is not that good. I burned through an entire battery in a few hours, so bring a few extra batteries or a power bank if you intend to use it for longer periods, or definitely use some battery saving techniques such as shutting the camera off while not using it. The camera does have a sleep mode, but I did find that even in sleep mode it still burns battery. The Sigma BF camera is a fashion piece that makes a statement and at the same time takes good photos. Not super high quality photos as you can get from like a Sony a7R5 or Canon R5, but as I said, those are not the cameras to compare the Sigma BF with. The purpose of said cameras and the Sigma BF are different. So I really want to congratulate Sigma on creating this camera. It's so beautiful. I'm personally usually more focused on the practical sides of photography cameras, but this look here just really speaks to me. It's actually really hard to compare this camera to anything else because it is just so different. The closest camera on the market is probably the Leica TL. If you prefer a more retro design like a Fuji X-T5 or Nikon ZFC, then you would probably not choose this camera. But if you want something completely new, different, and unique, which fits perfectly with the modern Apple look and still have the functions of a professional camera minus the ones I highlighted to begin with, then this camera is probably for you. So who is this camera for? I don't know. Is it for you? Would I personally buy it? Considering the price and having to buy into an entirely new lens system? No, but that does not mean it doesn't inspire me and I don't want to own it. Check out the video on the screen right now to set up your camera properly and making it a joy to work with and thereby take more and better photos.